But then she goes, yeah, when you were a kid, you were like every day you would come up with toys and you would ask me to like play, and I would be too busy. And she's like, I felt like that did something like negative to you, and I was like, I must have like fixed it or something.
Found out a way to play by yourself or something.
And now Ryan pranks everyone all the time.
Now I'm a schizophrenic. Welcome back to another great episode of Careful Boys. Today we have Nick and Kalyne over here. We got Joe and Anthony.
Hey.
And then we have an even better Joe right here. Question of the day right here is going to be a hard one. Or just a really major one. What is a mistake that your parents made that has positively shaped who you are today?
Oh, interesting. And are you even aware of it?
Right.
Yeah, you might not be until this.
Just that I was the mistake.
Yeah.
Well, that's the obvious answer.
That's a clearly.
I had this talk with my buddy because we were talking about how things that people feel sorry for us about are actually the obstacles we needed to become successful. So for his story is his dad had a gambling problem and they owned a couple of donut shops. One day he woke up seeing repo people and the cops at their house just taking shit like TV, all that, and he's like, what the fuck? So the donut shop was under his mom's name, so the livelihood wasn't taken away, thank God, right? So him and his brother and his mom was just, they worked really hard to like keep the family business going so they can eat, but that pushed him to becoming the entrepreneur that he is today, making like 30 mil a year.
Wow.
30 million?
Yeah.
This guy's Cambodian?
Yeah, Cambodian Chinese. But those were the kind of like it was like the building blocks for him going, oh shit, like building a business, being financially responsible, taking care of your family, all these things are so important. He did it as a kid. So from that jump start, which he could have blamed his parents and been like, you stupid dad with a gambling problem and all that. But his relationship with his dad got healed after that. He took care of them. And then also I think like he was talking about how like a lot of his money goes to charity because he didn't get into business for the reasons of personal gain. It was to save his family. So then like all of his business decisions have been charitable. He didn't know it yet. And then when he got into charity and he was helping Cambodia build, he was like, oh shit, this is what my passion was.
He's been doing his taxes all wrong the whole time.
But I'm like, that's true, because like a lot of people can grow up blaming, you gave me this trauma, you did this to me. But then I'm like, out of that trauma though, what did it jumpstart? Yeah. And for me, it was independence from my parents' thoughts and them infecting me with stupid thoughts.
What kind of?
So like, I see a lot of my friends and their lifelong fight with their father, right? Of like trying to get approval or like acceptance or certain things. And then for me, I wasn't influenced by his thoughts and his stupid guidance. So like, they might have stupid ideas and then you might believe that into your teen years and then on. And then you might be it might be like 30 when you realize, oh, my dad was wrong and he was telling me stupid shit. But I was following him because he was my role model. But from 14 on, I was able to develop and test and figure out my own thoughts, which freed me from the bad influence, which was him. Yeah.
Anthony, you got anything?
I mean, I think it's similar. The only difference is I don't make $30 million a year. But I think seeing, there's that feeling. It's hard to say it's a mistake at all, because my parents work really, really hard, just like, running to dry cleaners and stuff like that. But it's just like super humble, hardworking business stuff versus like something overly successful. But then just being a kid who had like, a very economy class lifestyle, you grow up with like other rich kids around you. Right, whether it be like in my own extended family or like just like friends from school, and then you're just always, when you're young and naive and ignorant, you're just envious, and you're just always like, man, I wish I had this, or like I resent my parents, you know what I'm saying, right, for like not being able to like kick ass in life and do better for me, when you just don't understand the complexities of life and just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But then you grow up with maybe a certain different type of fire, and I just feel like I was given that fire, by the the things I found as my shortcomings from my parents, you know? Because I was like, I hated working at my parents' dry cleaners. I was like, I don't want to fucking clean other people's clothes. It was just such a disgusting feeling. Somebody bringing their laundry, and I'd be like, look at it with such disdain. Even
Skid marks.
Yeah, now I'm like, that's, you know, an honest job is an honest job, right?
Yeah, right.
But it's like in your mind, all you think of every day when you're pissed off being somewhere and you hate something about your life, you just build this fucking fire that doesn't, you know, and then I think things like that specifically made me want to just do the shit that I wanted to do and not do stuff that I didn't want. And I think that I'm very thankful for that, but it's hard to say that I would look at that now as like a mistake. Now that I've just like gotten more mature and like, oh shit, you guys also had to flee your country during wartime and like went through something and sacrificed everything and started over. Like I might not have done better as a person back then, you know? So it's kind of like you appreciate, but I'm thankful for that fire. I'm thankful that I was able to turn that resentment into something that makes more sense and appreciation. Because I am the only person in my entire extended family I feel like that's doing something where I followed my curiosity and passion versus just like structure and security. But that's also because my family was the poorest out of my entire extended family that like made it to America. That's how I see it.
You know, the Barbara from Shark Tank?
Yeah.
She was talking about how she doesn't invest in rich kids. Like they might have the greatest ideas with the best connections, and she goes, there's a difference between poor kids with a startup or people with a background of like something they need to prove because they've been broke or whatever. She says like there's a difference because one is like you need to make it. The other one is like, if this one fails, I can do it again. I have the resources.
The safety net compared to like the hunger.
Yeah. So she says like there's a clear difference, and she can't teach that or show that. So I was like, oh, and then recently
That
I
is
saw a
true,
video
yeah, you
about
can.
this person talking about personality traits that make someone successful, and one of them was a chip on their shoulder because of their background, and they need to prove something, or they're angry at something and they just don't want to be like whatever.
Right.
Because it does have a more competitive spirit.
That's true. Yeah, it does do that.
So that kind of backs up what you said about having some type of I wouldn't say trauma is the word, maybe it is, but then you grow up thinking, how come the rich kids have it better? But do they?
Yeah.
Because then they don't have that fire.
It does take you a long time to realize that it's not objectively better.
Different set of problems.
Because at this point, when I see people that don't have the fire and they're looking, they fall into drugs, they fall into a depression because like they don't have that thing that pushes them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
I agree with that.
so maybe what I needed was a little bit of stress in my history to get there.
I had that chip really hard, and it was because of a mistake that I felt like my parents made. This was 1998, and I was 15. I used to practice piano outside of the house because my parents didn't always like me doing it at home. By the time I got to my teens.
So you rolled out your piano to your backyard?
No, I'd go to public pianos. I'd go to hotels. And then I went to the Bonaventure Hotel in downtown.
You went to hotels to play piano? Yeah. That's fucking
Or school. And then there was the Bonaventure Hotel at the time had a piano in the lobby. And then I would go play there, and then I would just like get tips, and just people would like request songs. I would just do them. And then on this day,
So you were good enough already when you get there. I thought you were doing like jingle bell, jingle bell.
no, there's not one here.
Can't come back here.
So I would play there, and then on this particular day, there was this staff from the jazz radio station from back then, and then the dude came up to me and he was like, "Dude, you're a kid and you're playing like this. Like we got to have you on the radio." And then we were talking for like a few hours, and we had arranged for me to come on, and they were gonna do what I did there, like live on the radio, of like, oh, we're just gonna tell you a bunch of like songs, and then you're gonna chain them together just like you did here today. They were just like, who the fuck does this? And then it wasn't as common back then, I think, to be like a piano bar pianist, but like a kid. So then
Because you can't even drink there.
yeah, because I can't do anything. And they were just like amazed that when I told them, oh, I come here just to practice, because
Yeah, that's crazy.
I couldn't practice at home because my parents would be like, stop doing that and study instead. So then like they called my house And then my mom picked up and said, "No, we're not interested."
Oh,
He's gonna be a doctor. Fuck you.
Yeah, and they just like snipped it right there.
Yeah.
And then I had such a chip from that happening that when I got into dance, I was like, I don't give a fuck what you guys think, I'm doing this. And then that's when I was like defiant about it. So like that was the chip for like wanting to be a dancer, regardless of like, you know, what the plan was for me. If it wasn't for them like cutting that dream short, then I don't think I would have been as like on fire about it. You know, I probably would have been afraid to make them unhappy. But it was because of that I'm like, I'm not gonna miss another shot like that.
So you gave up your jazz dreams to become a dancer.
Yeah, both things are gay. I see what you're saying.
I feel like
You're the one who made the mistake.
I feel incredibly lucky because my parents, they just said whatever it is that you choose to do, just make sure you do it with 110% conviction. And just invest yourself into it, and we'll support you.
Yeah, for real.
I mean,
It's an American dream, isn't it?
But it's like not like necessarily will support you as far as like money goes. Like they certainly could to a degree, but only so far, right? We weren't super wealthy, but it was more so like we'll support you emotionally, mentally, and obviously we have your back, and you know we want you to succeed in the things that you want to do. But I can't think of like a mistake, like at least one that I know of. What about you?
I don't know about a mistake. I think it's more of just like for when I was growing up, my parents and my sisters would always they'd always be talking shit in the house. They were fucking always just yapping about somebody else, talking about how this person does this and whatever. So I don't think it's more of like a specific amount, like a specific behavior that caused me to change everything. It was more of an observation of how they behaved, right? So for instance, like for my dad, there was always a sentiment of, oh, well, your dad doesn't do what he likes in his life. Like he had to pick this job, like for him being a sound editor. He didn't really like it. He was always
He didn't
chasing
like
something
doing
else.
that?
No, I guess not. Or at a certain point in time, he got sick of it and then started to want to do something else. And because he wanted to do a bunch of different jobs, that would put us sometimes in financial hardship, right? According to my family, right? So me growing up, I would always go like, well, fuck, I have to make sure whatever I do with my life, it has to be something I'm interested in, something I have a genuine love and passion for, and then that'll be my path to sustainability over a period of time, right? So that's how I kind of thought about how I was gonna go through.
So you kind of learned off of his mistakes.
Because that's in your programming.
Exactly, right? So, I don't even know if my dad really didn't like those jobs or not. This is just
Right.
what
That's their opinion.
Yeah, exactly, right? So then I would go through my life making sure that everything I did, money-wise, would always relate back to my interests and things that I wanted to do. Yeah, and I think that was really helpful for me because, but there was definitely times where I was like, fuck, this doesn't make any money. I don't know how I'm gonna make money off doing this. And but it taught me how to push through and to make it work, really, you know? Find a way to make it work and like, not take no for an answer, but I think whatever you're trying to do, there's a pocket that you could find to make money or to have your Venn diagram of your interests and monetary gain to make it fit, you know? But I guess that's mine.
So his dad was sound engineer for like the most major movies through the 90s and like Indiana Jones and Lethal Weapon, like
Crazy shit. Yeah.
To think that he didn't like it is pretty
Right.
And I'm sure he liked it up to a certain
Like
point.
he must have hated when Keanu had to come to your house and do Foley.
But I think as a person, right, you just get sick of once you do something for a long enough time. And there's something I didn't realize either until I started working in my field, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to do some other shit. And I would have like guilt about that, but in reality, it's like no, you just have to whatever you pick next. Like you said, you have to put all the 110% or whatever.
But that's an interesting programming because you're listening to other people's opinion on what your dad must be thinking. So then it's like seeing Yelp reviews instantly for someone else's performance. So then how do you not agree eventually? Like, oh yeah, I guess it's true.
Yeah, and that's
you're in your household.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is I realized that like, oh yeah, what people say all the time definitely isn't necessarily the truth, right? Like it's so.
Or it shouldn't always influence you that strongly.
Exactly. But there's tons of things like that. But I think that was one of the bigger ones for me. Like I remember I was like, I can't do something I hate And that's why. And I remember when I first started, when I went to college, and I was like, I'm a business major, and I took a couple of business classes. I was like, fuck this, I cannot do this. But then it's kind of full circle, and I realized for me to be able to excel in my business, I have to learn.
business.
Yeah. And then I actually have a fascination where I'm like, oh, cool, like I'm learning more about it, and I kind of like it. So it's
That's the part. That's the key, though. It's the fascination gets killed when someone tells you what the end result already is.
Exactly.
If they're like, oh no, that's bad, this is good, that's bad, this is good, then it's like you can't just be in wonderment anymore.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, why bother with this?
Yeah.
It's bad apparently.
Yeah. And as at that age, or well, because I'm the youngest, and I think I would always try to, all my decisions I would try to make would be like, just don't make anybody mad.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're doing the right thing.
Right. Don't garner disapproval.
Yeah. In reality, it's like you end up kind of sometimes living someone else's.
And you're not exploring anymore.
Yeah, and you're just worried about fucking up
That's
rather
the
than
real mistake.
Yeah, you're
Not
worried about fucking
exploring.
up. And like what Joe said, you got to make those mistakes. You got to kind of put yourself in those spots where you're like, oh, then you can learn from it. It becomes a learning experience and all that other shit,
That's right.
What about you, Cool Joe?
Cool Joe.
Anything even close to like what maybe your parents might have thought was a wrong decision that you turned into like a good outcome for yourself?
I don't necessarily see any like wrong decisions. I can't say growing up, I did live with my mom, and she kind of was a little bit more lenient on me. So I stood with my mom until I was like 5, and then I was kind of going down a bad path.
At 5 years old? What did you do? Drug deal?
At 5, damn.
He's like the Dave Chappelle's drug baby.
Bad San Jose kid.
The movie Baby Kids.
Yes.
Yeah, that was me.
You were a stoop
bro.
kid?
That was me. I was always getting into trouble. I was always like
shit.
stealing stuff, getting into fights. Just up to no good all the time. I was very curious. Okay, I like to just say I was curious.
Right, that's a good word.
But
Baby's kids.
yeah. So my dad saw me going around like that path and stuff like that. So then he kind of stepped in, took care of me, and then kind of brought me into the person I am today. I don't really take anything away from my mom. She was going through a hard time that time. She got herself clean and got back together, or got herself back together. But I don't really see it as a mistake. But I do see it as like a defining point to where it's like, okay, hey, like, if I have kids, what kind of situation I'd want them to be in. And then now I feel like I'm at a point to where it's like I try and hang around my mom and dad more just to understand them more. And I feel like that's how I find out more about myself, because I see a lot of the things my mom does. I see a lot of things my dad does. And I'm like, oh, so that's where I get that from. That comes from my mom, that comes from my dad. I like this about what my dad does. I don't like this about what my dad does. I just pick and choose what I like that goes on between both of them, and I just try to be the best person I can, honestly.
Yeah. It reminds me of like, the intro of Boys in the Hood when Fury Styles picks up the kid. And she's like, yeah, but it's time for you to teach him to be a man.
Drops him off.
Right.
Shit. That's a reality strike.
And then the household shifts, and he's like, there's rules in this house.
Yeah, exactly. Can't just be running around doing what you want to do.
But he's 5. He's a cute little 5-year-old.
He was like
Dude,
5
that's how
in
the
Boys in the
dads
Hood,
are.
too.
That's how the dads are, bro.
when they're little badass kids that age.
Yeah, I think there's like, your question sounds like, did you have resentment and then later realize
Like, switch it to a
that
positive.
helped you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like anyone here holds on to that, or like, because we all been through certain things, but it's easy to forget it, because like when you asked the question, I was like, there probably was a lot.
Right, yeah.
And then later there's forgiveness and understanding, and you're just like, and everything can be a positive. But then like when you're at this point where those obstacles push you to the corner in making big life decisions, but it shouldn't happen. Like nobody should have that kind of fucked up shit, but like it happens, and then it kind of becomes a part of who you are. So it's like, is it always
You're
wrong?
grateful for those
I don't know,
things.
yeah.
I don't think they're wrong, but the crazy revelation is like when like you sit and talk to your parents about eras where you never discussed it, and they tell you, like my mom has told me recently, like she was like, I regret not playing with you when you were a kid. And I was like, what?
And you don't even remember that.
No, I
but
don't.
see, that's the crazy,
And
the
I
things
never
that they
thought it was-
regret.
And but then she goes, yeah, when you were a kid, you were like every day you would come up with toys and you would ask me to like play, and I would be too busy. And she's like, I felt like that did something like negative to you, and I was like, I must have like fixed it or something. Because she sees that as a mistake, and I don't.
You found out a way to play by yourself or something.
Yeah, I think.
And now Ryan pranks everyone all the time.
Now I'm a schizophrenic.
Wait, what's that over there?